Imagine an army fully armed and feared by the entire world, being challenged by a gladiator. Spartacus, a slave meant to entertain the Roman elite in blood-soaked arenas, flipped the script in a way no one saw coming. You think you know the power of Rome? Think again. What Spartacus did in the hills and valleys of Italy was more than just a rebellion. He humiliated seasoned generals and pushed the most powerful army on earth to its limits. How did a group of men with no formal military training pull off the impossible? What was behind Spartacus' tactics that brought Rome to its knees? Today, you're about to uncover the secrets behind his unlikely victories and understand how Spartacus challenged an entire empire. Stay tuned, because what we're about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about rebellion and military strategy. Spartacus wasn't born a legend. He began as a Thracian, likely part of a tribe known for its warriors, before being captured and sold into slavery by the Roman Empire. Sentenced to a life of brutal combat in the gladiatorial arenas, Spartacus was forced to entertain the Roman elite with his skill and savagery. But the spark of rebellion was already smoldering within him. Unlike other gladiators, Spartacus had experienced the freedom of a soldier before his capture, and that memory was enough to fuel a fierce desire for liberty. The breaking point came in 73 BCE at the gladiatorial school in Capua, where Spartacus and around 70 fellow gladiators launched a desperate escape. Armed with kitchen knives and basic tools, they overwhelmed the guards and fled to the countryside. This small band of rebels quickly swelled in numbers as slaves from across the region joined their cause. Spartacus became their undisputed leader, and what had started as a fight for survival morphed into a full-scale rebellion. The Roman authorities, initially dismissing the uprising as a minor disturbance, were about to face a formidable enemy. Spartacus wasn't just a man driven by vengeance. He was a tactician. He understood that his group of former slaves and gladiators could not match the Roman legions in a traditional head-on battle. They lacked the equipment, training, and resources. But Spartacus had something the Romans didn't: flexibility, local knowledge, and the ability to inspire his men. He transformed the rebel army into a highly mobile force, using guerrilla tactics and ambushes to outwit larger, better-armed Roman forces. This was the beginning of a new kind of warfare for Rome, one they weren't prepared for. One of the key elements of Spartacus's leadership was his ability to keep his men united. Despite coming from different backgrounds, gladiators, slaves, and freemen from various regions, he built a sense of purpose and common identity among them. Spartacus wasn't just a warrior. He was a symbol of defiance against a system that had crushed so many. His ability to channel the collective anger and desperation of his followers into a focused military effort was a critical factor in their initial successes against the Roman forces. As the rebellion gained momentum, Spartacus's army began to defeat Roman legions in battle, something no one thought possible. His forces swelled to tens of thousands, and what had once been a band of fugitives was now a full-scale army, moving across Italy and terrifying the Roman Senate. The rise of Spartacus, from a mere slave to the leader of one of the most significant revolts in Roman history, was the product of both his personal strength and his ability to turn ordinary men into warriors willing to challenge the might of Rome. One of the most remarkable aspects of Spartacus's rebellion was his use of guerrilla tactics. With limited resources and no access to the kind of heavy armor or disciplined formations that the Roman legions relied on, Spartacus turned the rough terrain of Italy to his advantage. His army was constantly on the move, often retreating into the mountains, forests, and rugged landscapes that made it difficult for the Roman forces to engage them directly. This mobility became one of Spartacus's greatest strengths, allowing his forces to strike swiftly and retreat before the Romans could mount a proper defense. The Roman legions, accustomed to open-field battles and sieges, struggled to adapt to this new kind of warfare. Spartacus avoided direct confrontations whenever possible, instead opting for hit-and-run tactics that frustrated his enemies. His forces would launch sudden, devastating attacks on Roman outposts or smaller patrols, disappearing into the landscape before reinforcements could arrive. These guerrilla tactics not only preserved his army's strength, but also allowed him to gather supplies and armaments from the defeated Romans, steadily improving his force's capabilities. Spartacus's deep understanding of Roman military tactics also played a crucial role in his success. He had seen how the legions operated during his time as both a soldier and a gladiator. This insight gave him the knowledge he needed to anticipate Roman strategies and outmaneuver them. Spartacus's forces would exploit weaknesses in the Roman formations, often attacking at night or during poor weather when the Romans were least prepared. These unconventional methods, combined with the rebels' growing experience, allowed them to win several significant victories against Roman generals who underestimated their capabilities. The rebels' use of the terrain wasn't just limited to defense. It became a tool for offense as well. Spartacus frequently used natural choke points and ambush sites to trap Roman forces. He lured them into narrow passes or dense forests, where their numbers and rigid formations became a disadvantage. Once isolated, the Roman troops found themselves outmaneuvered and overwhelmed by Spartacus's faster, more agile forces. This constant harassment wore down the Roman legions and demoralized the soldiers, many of whom were not used to this type of warfare. This relentless campaign of guerrilla warfare highlighted Spartacus's brilliance as a leader. He wasn't just reacting to the Roman threat. He was shaping the battlefield, forcing the Romans to fight on his terms. By turning the rugged landscape of Italy into an advantage, Spartacus showed that a disciplined army wasn't invincible, and with the right strategies, even a band of former slaves could challenge the most powerful military force in the world. Spartacus's victories over seasoned Roman generals shocked the Roman Senate and military alike. These were not just minor skirmishes. Spartacus and his forces were repeatedly defeating the best-trained and most experienced Roman legions. One of the key reasons for this was Spartacus's ability to exploit the overconfidence of his opponents. Many Roman generals viewed the rebel army as nothing more than a disorganized mob, a belief that Spartacus turned to his advantage. By using unconventional tactics and taking the fight to unpredictable locations, Spartacus repeatedly caught Roman commanders off guard. In battle after battle, Spartacus demonstrated a keen understanding of when to strike and when to retreat. He knew that facing the Roman legions head-on would be a fatal mistake, so he relied on ambushes, flanking maneuvers, and surprise attacks to dismantle the Roman formations. These tactics confused the Roman commanders, who were accustomed to fighting other disciplined armies, not a rebel force using guerrilla warfare. Spartacus exploited their rigidity, forcing them into situations where their training became a disadvantage. One of the most famous victories came against the Roman general Gaius Claudius Glaber. Sent to crush the rebellion, Glaber underestimated Spartacus, assuming that his superior numbers and equipment would ensure a quick victory. However, Spartacus's forces outmaneuvered Glaber's army, setting a trap on Mount Vesuvius. In a daring move, Spartacus and his men descended from the cliffs under cover of darkness, taking the Roman camp by surprise and overwhelming them. This victory, combined with others, showcased Spartacus's ability to think strategically, using the terrain and timing to devastating effect. Even more impressive was Spartacus's ability to maintain discipline and morale within his army despite their ragtag composition. His men were not professional soldiers, yet they fought with the determination and coordination of a trained force. Spartacus inspired loyalty not just through his charisma, but by leading from the front lines, sharing in the dangers and hardships of his men. This leadership style earned him the respect of his followers, who were willing to take enormous risks in battle under his command. Each victory further emboldened Spartacus's army, swelling its ranks with more freed slaves and even deserters from the Roman legions. Spartacus's string of victories was not just a testament to his tactical genius, but a symbol of hope to the oppressed across Italy. His success against the mighty Roman Empire proved that even the most unlikely of rebels could triumph against overwhelming odds if they fought smart and stayed united. As Spartacus's rebellion continued to grow, so did the Roman response. The Senate, finally recognizing the scale of the threat, assigned Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, to crush the uprising. Crassus, unlike previous commanders, understood the seriousness of Spartacus's threat and was willing to commit massive resources to end the rebellion once and for all. With tens of thousands of Roman soldiers at his disposal, Crassus began systematically hunting down Spartacus's forces, forcing them into a corner. Despite the overwhelming pressure from Crassus's forces, Spartacus continued to fight strategically. He made several attempts to escape Italy, including a plan to cross the Alps, but circumstances and internal divisions within his army prevented his escape. Spartacus knew that his chances of defeating Crassus in a direct confrontation were slim, yet he refused to give in. His army, now numbering in the tens of thousands, was still a force to be reckoned with, and Spartacus was determined to lead his men in one final stand. The final battle came in 71 BCE in southern Italy. Crassus's legions, now better prepared for Spartacus's guerrilla tactics, cornered the rebel forces. Spartacus, knowing that escape was impossible, chose to face the Roman legions in a pitched battle. His decision to fight directly, rather than continue guerrilla tactics, was driven by both necessity and a desire to end the rebellion on his own terms. In the brutal clash that followed, Spartacus and his men fought fiercely, but the Roman legions, now disciplined and reinforced, overwhelmed the rebel army. Spartacus's body was never found on the battlefield, but his legacy lived on. His rebellion had exposed the vulnerabilities of Rome's military and social systems, showing that even the most powerful empire in the world could be challenged by the oppressed. His use of guerrilla tactics, combined with his ability to lead a diverse and inexperienced group of fighters, left a lasting impact on military strategy. The lessons of Spartacus's rebellion were studied by future generations, both in Rome and beyond, influencing how empires dealt with insurgencies and uprisings. Though Spartacus's rebellion was ultimately crushed, his tactical brilliance and leadership left a permanent mark on history. He wasn't just a gladiator or a rebel leader. He was a strategist who used the tools at his disposal to challenge an empire. The story of Spartacus is not one of defeat, but of resistance and the power of human will to defy impossible odds. His legacy as a military leader continues to inspire, reminding us that even the most marginalized individuals can challenge the mightiest powers when driven by a cause.